So, all of you, so how do you get an idea? Making art, writing a poem, making a film, doing a dance, all of these things require getting an idea. So, some ideas are really easy to get. Like, here's one. Like, I'm thirsty. Like, I'm thirsty, I really need to drink a tequila sunrise. So that's really easy. And then there's another one that's, I'm hungry, so I really would like to eat a hamburger. So, but then there are other ideas that are deeper or different or outside. They're nuanced in a different way, and they're often difficult to get at. And you kind of scrabble at your psyche to try to make an idea come into being. And how do you begin? And how did I begin here in this wonderful space? Because I think that getting an idea is like entering a big empty room. So how do you enter the big empty room, the big empty forest? I'd like to talk today about how, for me, an impulse became a thought became an idea, and an idea became a project. My idea was to make something that would be a tribute to our American self-taught outsider artists with all their fervency and wonderful weird eccentricities. I thought I would bring them together with an idea of art itself being a kind of healing. I said I would make a radiant, shining object with poetry embedded like an incantation. The whole course through with invisible energies. Even you here in front of me now, electricity and invisible energies are coursing through all of you. And there is a single moment and a singular time in which this came together. So in August of 2021, I was in Wisconsin and went to the Kohler Art Center. And the Kohler Art Center, this Kohler Art Center shows a lot of self-taught artists. And I thought, oh great, and I walked up the stairs and then I was hit by a bolt of lightning. And I just was stopped, sort of like a stunned cow. And when I came to, I realized, wow, whose work is this? And so I went into the darkened room of the as yet to me unknown artist's work of these silvery, radiant objects that were shimmering from top to bottom in the exhibition in the darkened room. So it woke up an awareness in me of a big empty room inside myself, because in seeing his exhibition so packed, I thought, oh, I feel like I am a big empty room compared to this artist. And where he was full, I was at that instant empty. So how to work with this free new space now? And then now a hungry space that I realized. It went from being aware to being alert, and then rapidly to being hungry. So who was this artist, Emery Blagden? Blagden was a Nebraska farmer living from 1907 to 1986. He was part of a farming family with, I think, 6 brothers, parents. So he spent 30 years on the compression and exhibition of his work. And the shed later came to be reconstructed at the Kohler. So for Emery Blagden, which I'll spell it to you later, so you can look him up on your phone, his work was not really just art. His work was a mission. And how was it a mission? It was a mission because his mother had cancer. And then his brother got cancer, stomach cancer. And he thought that really what he was making in his shed was a kind of healing machine. So he would ask everyone who came in, like, do you feel it? Do you feel the energy? how do you feel? Do you feel better? Do you feel optimistic? So his work, as I said, was not art. It was really a mission. And he believed in the 18th, 19th, and 20th century ideas about the electromagnetic energies being in the earth and from the air. And that he believed he could harness these energies to heal. So he had his origin story. And for him, his work was literally a healing machine. For me, as an artist, the point was not if and how it worked, but I was so attracted to his fervency and his devotion and his striving that he did to make this machine. In the end, he too got cancer and he died. I knew in seeing his work that I wanted to make something inspired by him. I wanted to make something of a deep glory. In creating this new body of work, I felt the idea of healing was closely linked to yearning. A yearning for change, for betterment, for the light. As put by poet Tom Slay, right here, yes, you're right here, change me, heal me, make me other than I am. Change me, heal me, make me other than I am. In all my work, poetry is its own large presence. It's a companion to physical objects. It inspires them. Sometimes it's readable, and sometimes it's evasive. So, for example, in this piece here, these words here are all Emily Dickinson. Here is some Emily Dickinson for you to ingest. Take all away from me, but leave me ecstasy. So take all away from me. Take all away from me, but leave me ecstasy. Also, she wrote, the soul has bandaged moments. When too appalled to stir, she feels a ghastly fright come up and stop to look at her. So her words within this piece are, for me, a presence, and they become the air in which all the copper images float. So from Emery Blagden, I had a big starting, a big beginning, but the next giant turning point in my work, or in my mind, which is really where, of course, where the work comes from, was being invited to be a Smithsonian Artist Research Fellow in 2023 to 2024. So I was so honored, and the pressure, I like pressure, actually, I like pressure. The pressure of thinking through my proposal to them, which was called Healing with Unseen Energies, whole new doors opened, whole new empty rooms opened to me through my research that I did at the Smithsonian. There were new discovered rooms to be had inside my body. And because the Smithsonian called for research in 2 museums, not just the art museum, so I went to the National Museum of American History, and I decided that I would do a deep dive into science because of Emery Blagden and his focus on healing. I wanted to know more about 18th, 19th, 20th century moves towards healing, towards discovering electricity, and I read at least 50 books, which you can ask me later. So I would be bringing together scientists, doctors, even medical quacks. I found out so much about medical quacks. I really love medical quacks. There were so many things, like you could take a pill for constipation and for mental depression at the same time. You could buy an electric belt that would, if you were a weak man, which I know no one here is, that it would stimulate your virility. And of course, there were lots of medications for so-called weak women, usually in pill form, laudanum. So I had a couple of personal family connections to these themes. There was my father, When I was a girl, my father was diagnosed with schizophrenia, your mom. It was the 1950s and 60s, the heyday of electric shock treatments, and he had a lot of them. So I grew up wanting to heal him. And don't we all want to heal our parents? I think we all want to heal our parents. And then, on the other side of the family, there's my great-grandfather, Charles Norton, and my name is Lesley Dill. So Charles Norton, so he was an MIT scientist in the 1890s out of Boston, and I'd long heard stories, family stories, that he was very involved in the first Röntgen machine. The Röntgen machine, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, is the first X-ray machine that came from Europe over to here and came to him at the Boston City Hospital. So being an eccentric New Englander, he immediately put the Röntgen X-ray machine on a wheelbarrow and he wheeled it around Boston to his friends, saying, would you like to see what your hand really looks like? What your wrist really looks like? I mean, you know, not thinking about the potential harm of the early X-ray machines. So increasingly, I continued to gravitate towards electricity, and you know, in the 1800s, electricity was still a new force, but there were people like Alessandro Volta, who I think is directly responsible for Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. So as an artist, I wanted a primitive, mythic sense of electricity to be in this work, in that work, in all the work that's here. As Franz Kafka wrote, he felt, you have an idea and you know you're on the path. He wrote, he felt as if the way were opening before him to the unknown nourishment he craved. And then, of course, Dickinson, electrical the embryo, but we demand the flame. I mean, who in the 1860s would even say the word embryo? I mean, we can't even say the word menstruation now, right? But so there she was, electrical the embryo, but we demand the flame. I decided I would build a landscape of figures, towers, animals, heroes, God, but I had to think, what would be the machine? You know, I was so influenced by Emery Blagden's healing machine. The whole thing was a machine. I thought, well, how can I do this? So I asked my Smithsonian advisor, Leslie Emberger, I said, Leslie, can I just call it like the Lesley Dill healing machine? And she said, no. She said, you have to come up with something yourself. I said, oh, okay. So being a reader and knowing a lot of writers, so I envisioned this old typewriter as somehow generating this big world, this entire world. This is a 1915 Remington typewriter, bought on eBay, of course. 1915 was the height of World War I, when the latest technologies of war were causing industrial levels of human destruction. Destruction that ironically served to quicken the major advances in the healing sciences. I also chose a typewriter because in its time, it was so potent. It could speed someone's words immediately from the tapping of the typewriter into paper, or in this case, into this wall, and the paper would then be also picked up by newspapers. Kafka. Oh, tremendous world that I have in my head, but how to free myself and free it without being torn to pieces. My work often contains these references of visionary experience and illumination, and I hope to catch that sense of radiance by using copper as a primary material. And also, the second part of the title of this show, which is called Wild Grace, is this Private Hallucinatory Moment, which was written by Tom Slay. So we can ask him later what is his favorite private hallucinatory moment, or you can ask me too. So What I found in using copper is that the surface can be easily transformed by various chemicals and patinas, so that it could be tinted towards blue, tinted towards green, made full of many darknesses and many lightnesses altogether. So it became a palette from which I could work in terms of the idea of radiance. And the copper is really, really thin, and I backed it with glue and organza. And the resulting explosion of images were, of course, all hand cut out. So here there are portraits of artists. There's Emery Blagden, and the woman with the big guitar is Sister Gertrude Morgan, a core New Orleans, fantastic, amazing, inspiring. Thank you, Stephen. So these artists, including Sister Gertrude Morgan, Bill Traylor, Martin Ramirez, Howard Finster, I was drawn to the wildness and freedom that I find in their artworks. So why was I drawn to it? Because I am wild. I am free. But I thought I would like my work to be even wilder and more free. So I took a lesson from these artists and also from my research into the depths of science. And this and the rest of the exhibition is what happened. I wanted the viewers to have a sense of everything rising up, as if your pupils that would be covered would just lightly open and then would rise up. And just in the nature of rising up, I think that is a awe and a beauty and a mystery. As William Faulkner wrote, rise the eyes from the deep quiet into glory. So as you know, my search was to make a kind of deep glory, which also comes from his words, rise the eyes from the deep quiet into glory. The density of all this does ask the viewer to slow down to see if you can find things. As you get to the middle kingdom, there are more deer and horses and trees, running out that side and running out that side, antelopes, wolves, deer, trees. And then there's a fabulous Sister Gertrude Morgan demonic figures, the beasts of Revelation. I thought of them as being the manifestations of those that need healing. I'm sure we can think of many people who might fall into that category. And also there are some new favorite figures that came from my husband's comic book collection. There is Hawk Girl and Hawkman, outer edges flaming, some with lightning bolts. So I did, of course, want to make all the time that it took to make this visible, so that you would feel something from just the very nature of how much time that it took to have everything being stitched and pinched and cut and rubbed and scrubbed and washed. I see this finished wall as a kind of tapestry, because it is only paper and copper and everything is sewn and stitched together. This then is a long path that brought me to this wall piece of swirling mythic figures. But first, I want to thank publicly the enormous amount of interns and assistants and friends in my building who would say, I have a few hours in between my Zoom calls. Do you want me to come down and sew? And I go, yeah, So there were a lot of people working on this, and I want to thank them here. And then I will close. See if you can guess who this is. To be alive is power, existence in itself, without a further function, omnipotence, enough. Thank you very much. So this paper that is everywhere here is mulberry paper, which is a great Asian paper with long fibers. And also it will not yellow. This paper will not yellow. I actually know that because I've had it in my closet for about 9 years. So I used all of it. And then the lettering is from stencils. So I would invite myself and anybody who was working with me to cut out an image, like this man riding a horse, or this man with a flute. I would ask them to cut out an image that I would have printed out from a drawing or a photocopy. And then when they had finished cutting it out, I would ask them to go to the big Emily Dickinson book and to have them find their own poem, their own choice of phrases that they would put behind what they did. So in the end, we had to add a lot of poetry because there were too many holes, because it was so finely done. But I feel that I was just so happy that I let go, and I just invited everyone to find their own source of poetry and to put it using the stencils, the approved stencils, on the works. So it was, in many ways, it was an ongoing community project, changing every 3 months of this people or that people.
Right center of that one.
I'm used to seeing this on the table. No, this line really comes from Sister Gertrude Morgan's Beasts of Revelation. So, her Beasts of Revelation mostly had seven heads and little horns. And then when I got up here, I think all of these figures up here as being radiant shamanic people. I especially, with this big Yupik figure here, he is amazing with his big healing hands. He's sort of scary, and he would cover up someone who he wanted to heal. But also, these shamanic figures, because they would adorn themselves with regalia, this regalia would enable them to cross the real world, the real day-to-day world, into the world of the spirit world of the animals. So, for example, if they were going to kill a polar bear, they would have in their regalia some aspects of a polar bear on them. And through that, they would be asking forgiveness and they would be asking for help in killing them. So that was really an interesting part. Thank you for the question. So that was really an interesting part in contributing again to my idea of the expansive visionary world, because this is what they believed in. The copper comes in like about 36 inches in rolls, kind of like that. So we would unroll it and then cut it up. And I would patina it on the staircase outside of my floor of my apartment building. So we would sort of squeeze in there, and we would put the liver of sulfur in, and then we would dip the copper, but we would it would kind of crunch because the bucket was so small. So it would crunch and crumble in the patina. And you have to be really quick because liver of sulfur can be really dark really fast. So that was really fun, and sometimes it would be really iridescent, and like I think here, and we would go, oh my God, how did we get that? How did we get that? Did we use hot water? Did we use salt? How did we get that? So, this whole exhibition was very physical, from gluing to cutting to weaving to stitching to the making of. Was very physical. I like that. Yeah. We'd choose an image. I have like a huge folder of different images. Many of the images from the self-taught outsider artists, like I'm a little dizzy in front of my own work. So I know Martin Ramirez is right. And here's a deer with 2 eyes. I'm still looking for the, and here's the beasts of Revelation that we supposedly want to heal them because they represent evil in this piece. And even though they're so adorable, and so I would work with these young people and I would say, we are electric. We are radiant. Every time you breathe, every time you see someone on the subway that you look up and they're looking at you, we are radiant. So when you cut anything out, make it be spiky. Have it be full of holes so there's transparency and translucency from the body within to the body without. So there were a lot of patterns, and I had young people from different cultures, and like Layla here, it's from Persia. So, and here's a comic book figure, and here's some Mr. Electricity. There's a puppet. I think I would have to stand back to be able to find some of them.
That one.
This guy?
Yeah, and the hat.
Yeah, so, Paul Klee made a lot of puppets that are fabulous. So in many ways, these works are part of my collection of art books that are just photocopy, and then we would work with them. I just wanted to include everything in this world. I mean, of course I could do it again, but maybe not soon. Well, also it's often unreadable, which working with some poets like you could be a downside, but I like people to want to work to read, don't we? We want to crave reading, crave the acknowledgement of a letter as a letter. C'est tout? Oui, c'est tout. Merci.